So, did you get in touch with Catherine? Oh, okay. Okay. Is it hot? Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sanyavare Paschatya Rasatarine. So we're broadcasting live from Sadhu Sangha, which is why you don't recognize the background and why the light's so bad that I look like a raccoon. If you look at the video, my eyes are black. Yeah, anyway. It's hearing is more important than seeing. This morning we took a morning walk, and during this retreat, I had been thinking about how we want to experience the holy name more deeply. Specifically, we want to experience Krishna, but we don't. We experience so many things other than Krishna, and we want to experience Krishna, right? Like dancing on our tongues and real, feeling his presence, realizing that he's in the holy name and so on. And sometimes we pray, sometimes we beg, sometimes we demand Krishna. Why not now? I don't deserve this. Give it to me. And Krishna's laughing at us, saying, it's like, give me $1 million, Get out of bed. That joke, God, help me win the lottery. God says, buy a lottery ticket. So it's like, we want the result without the action. Krishna, help me get out of bed. Get up and I'll help you get out of bed. Like that. So I began thinking about Trinadapi Sunichena. Like this is the, we want to realize Krishna. If you realize Krishna's name, then you chant all day, because how can you stop? Right? It's like if you'd imagine your favorite preparation and you had unlimited digestion and you never got full. And the more you ate, the more you wanted to eat, the better it tasted and the hungrier you got. So yeah, that's what we want, right? So what's the last line of the third verse of Shishastakam? Kirtaniya Sadahari. If you do the first three things, you get the last one. And what's the first? Be humble, respect others. The second is respect others. Don't want respect for yourself. Be humble, be tolerant. Feel yourself humble. Others are better than you. Tolerant. Tolerate yourself, tolerate others, tolerate the dualities, because if you don't tolerate the dualities, then you're just always up and down and you're being pushed around. So you can't, if you're being pushed around by material energy, that's not going to help. And then respect others, always see others as worthy of respect and not position yourself to get respect, neither think that I can't function if I don't get respect. Then you can chant. So chanting always Hare Krishna, chanting always Kirtaniya Sadahari, it means that's when you have a taste. That's when you can do it. You can't just like, okay, I'll give you all an instruction. Today, I'd like you to chant constantly. Kirtaniya Sada. Sada means always. You ever read that verse and go, how do you chant always? Like, how do you do that? I have to go to work. And we heard the other day, I think it was Indra Maharaj said that the way I heard the story was some man saw Prabhupada and he said, I thought you're always supposed to be chanting. I don't see you chanting because you're talking to devotees about pushing on the movement, publishing books. And Prabhupada called the man over and said, put your ear on my back. And he heard the Maha Mantra. So, yeah, always chanting. So I was thinking, as I was having this deep realization of how little realization I have of Krishna and his name. That's what was your deep realization today, Prabhu? Yeah, I had a deep realization that I have no realization. That was my deep realization. So as I'm having this deep realization that Krishna is in his holy name, and I'm not fainting and crying and screaming and hair standing on end, voice choked. Why? That's a good question, right? Why is it not happening? I mean, you ever read something in Prabhupada's books and you're like, oh, that sounds good. And then the next thought is, but it's not happening to me. So the natural question is why? Like, is this supposed to happen? Results vary, you know. That's basically anything you read in Shastra, the disclaimer is results vary. So take this oil, put on your head, all your hair will grow back, or it'll grow back black if it's gray. Yeah, results vary. Yeah, which could mean it's never happened before, but could happen. So, okay, so results vary. So then, what can I do to get the result? And then this verse tells you. So, so that's been my thinking the last few days. You know. And so then if you think about what humility is, a good way to start for us, because to try to understand humility for us it's not so easy, because it's like we didn't grow up practicing humility. We kind of practiced trying to be number one, more or less, right? Or two or three, isn't it? Like, what did your parents say? Be like in a class of 100, be 101, or did they say be number one? And if you were number 101, what would your friends say? Loser, right? So, you know, you're not going to get many Facebook likes or Instagram likes if you're a loser. So we always want to be a winner. So it's hard for us, Hare Krishna, it's hard for us to understand what humility is. But I think it's easier to understand what it isn't, because we're more familiar with what it isn't, right? Like, I don't know what humility is, but I know what it isn't. And so Girashwami said something this morning, because the topic of envy came up. And naturally, when this topic comes up, we want to understand what it is, but we want to understand how to get rid of it. Just as we're trying to understand humility and like how to have it and how to get rid of everything in the way. And he said that you should never hate devotees. You know, if you're going to hate somebody that deserves to be hated. Like like they're blowing the world up. Okay, hate them. Yeah. Or at least, and if you don't want to hate them because you can hate what they do, hate the sin, not the sinner. But at least if you need to hate somebody, don't hate a devotee, and don't hate a devotee that other people like, because that becomes like magnified. The hatred now becomes magnified because there's so many people that like him that are going to be upset if we don't like him. And worse, don't hate a devotee that Prabhupada likes, because I can't think of anything worse than that. And I've always caught myself when a devotee would do something and I thought, this is wrong. And I would think, does Prabhupada like this devotee? Because if he does and I don't, that's a problem, right? Does Krishna like this devotee? Does Krishna appreciate? Does this devotee spiritual master appreciate? If he does and I don't, it's a problem. Isn't it? Don't you think? Yes? Yes or yes? Yeah, I'm just making sure everyone online is awake. Until the other day, we were saying that Krishna can't sit in a dirty place, and pride is very dirty. It's one of the dirtiest things is pride. And so you have to remove pride from your heart if you want Krishna to sit there. Also, envy is part of it. So then Giri Swami said this morning, something so important for us to understand. He said that Prabhupada said, if one devotee in the temple is envious of another, he contaminates the whole temple. Wow. On the count of three, you can all say, wow. 1, 2, 3. Wow. There is a devotee in San Diego. He's on the East Coast now. His name's Madhavendra Puri. He didn't say, wow. He said that was jai worthy. So that's the cliche ISKCON speak of wow is Prabhu. That statement is jai worthy. It's worthy of a jai. Or he'd eat some prasadam and he thought, wow, this sweet ball is jai worthy. That kirtan was jai worthy. Yeah. So it's quite a jai worthy statement. And if we appreciate a devotee, if a devotee is doing well, if a devotee is advancing, it benefits the whole temple. And if a devotee is degrading another devotee, it contaminates the whole temple. That is, I think, extremely powerful and important statement for all of us to meditate on. I could be ruining ISKCON by my pride. Yes.
When I hear all these things, there's a specific devotee that, like in our case, we're still very, very new to practice. And our temple is like just barely starting out. And so this devotee, in particular, I won't name the names, but like he happens to work with me. And so I get his association almost constantly. And he's got some really great qualities, actually. He's a really wonderful reader. And he's very, very passionate about the Bhagavatam. But he doesn't chant, and he doesn't bother to follow the ranks as far as attempting that. He thinks the most important thing is that he's scribe. That he reads Bhagavatam. So his practice is to read Bhagavatam and share it on Facebook. So he shares almost the entire canto on Facebook. Like every verse. And it's very, very difficult for me to appreciate him sometimes. And when I do that, find myself becoming envious of him or feeling like negative emotions, but it's in my immediate attention. Because this has been a recurring problem.
Yeah.
And so I've made really nice friendship with him. But at the same time, it's like his association is kind of rough.
Well, let me repeat the question for them. You didn't hear it, right? No, they didn't hear it, no. There's a very nice devotee who posts every day some verse purport from Bhagavad, from 10th canto. He's like, his sadhana is to read Bhagavatam and cry and not to chant. Does he go to kirtan or just not chant?
He doesn't go to kirtan. He does go to kirtan. He's on his phone reading.
Oh,
Wow.
so he's not into kirtan. He's not into the four, maybe 1 or 2 principles.
Yeah, 1 or 2 is good for him, but the rest are.
Yeah. The 2 principles that we all can easily follow. Yeah. I just have difficulty with 2 things. Everything else is fine. And so the question is, like, it's difficult to appreciate, right? Well, and you find yourself being envious, and what else did you say?
At certain points, I find myself trying to critique him, trying to like steer him.
Yeah, of course.
But to a certain extent, I think he's far more advanced than me.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm making countless offenses against him.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot that can be said about this Prabhu. So we'll use this Prabhu as a as an example of something that's so important to understand. There are always going to be people who are doing something that's going to disturb us, whether it's bhakti or not bhakti, right? So here we have an example of someone doing bhakti, but not in the prescribed way. So it's a disturbance, like if you see a devotee chanting, Hare Krishna, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, and he goes up to you. And I finish my rounds in 50 minutes. Like, what's the matter with all of you? It takes you 2 hours. It's kind of frustrating, isn't it? You know, have you ever seen a devotee like that? They go, Prabhu, you know, 32 syllables, not 6. You know? So it's like a little disturbing, naturally. Or someone's sleeping in class, or, you know, there's unlimited things that can disturb us, and unlimited things that can disturb us with people who aren't Krishna conscious, right? And limited, you know, it's just the way it is. All right. So now the first question we have to ask ourselves is, if I'm allowing this person to disturb me, this person now has power over me, because this person disturbs me. Every time I see them, I'm disturbed. When I think about them, I'm disturbed. So this person now has total control over my mind, right? So, but that's just an example of unlimited numbers of people that could have control over us. You know, Putin can have control over us. Donald Trump can have control over us. You know, the whole political system, you know, things we don't like, things that frustrate us, or things we like can control us. The things we like that are bad for us, right? So one of the most, I think, important decisions we all have to make is, who's going to control the way I think, right? And so I don't want to think in derogatory ways towards anybody, even non-devotees. It's not just devotees. It's like Trinadapi Sunicena is for everyone. It's respecting all living entities. There's no demarcation. Okay, I respect up to this point. After that, they're not devotees, so who cares? They're just dogs. They live like dogs. No, that's not the way a devotee thinks. So if I'm practicing Krishna consciousness, I want to be able to think and feel and have attitudes and beliefs that are congruous with what it means to be a devotee. And I don't want anything that's antagonistic. And therefore, I got to get that like clear in my head. Like that has to be clear starting foundation, that this is what I'm trying to do. And I will never allow any other person's actions or words to take me away from my integrity of what I want to do and I want to be. So you need both things. Does that make sense? You need, like, clearly, who do I want to be as a devotee? And the other point, they work together. And therefore, if this is what I want to do and where I want to be, I won't allow anyone else's behavior to move me away from that, right? So that's kind of like what you're saying. I don't want to be envious, but I am. And I don't want to be disturbed, but I am. And we all understand. Yeah. Sounds kind of disturbing, doesn't it? But guess what? You don't have to be disturbed. That's good news. I mean, like this is an important mantra that's kind of the conclusion of what I just said. You don't have to be disturbed. And like you said, he's probably more advanced than I am. So now, okay, so that's another way of seeing it, right? So this devotee is doing what he's doing, you know, 2 principles, no kirtan, or on the phone and during the kirtan, and, you know, ecstatically reading Bhagavatam, and you're wondering, is he actually a devotee, or like, what is he, or what's going on inside? And then you ask yourself, how would I like to think about him? And say, well, I would like to appreciate him for what I can appreciate. That would be better, you know, because it's all about focus. I mean, you have a choice. What do you want to focus on?
So it's very easy actually to appreciate creative
Yeah,
at certain times.
Yeah.
And then he'll say something completely off the wall. Oh,
yeah, that's who he is. So, okay, then there's a third principle here. Okay, the next principle, the principle I just said is what do you want to focus on? And then the next principle is well, let's go back to this principle. What do I want to focus on? I want to focus on thoughts, feelings, beliefs that are going to help my Krishna consciousness. So in relation to him, you ask the question, how do I do that, right? What's the mentality? The mentality is Trinadapi. Okay. So what can I focus on? Because it's just a choice. Where I focus is a choice. Our whole life is about focus, right? And so you're miserable, you're upset. What have you focused on? Something miserable and upsetting, obviously, unless you're like chemically, you have a chemical problem, that's causing it, right? You're happy. What are you focused on? Things that are happy. So then now we have to ask ourselves the question, if I want to be inspired and in Krishna consciousness, then what would be the best thing to do? It would be to always focus on what would help me. So we're going to use this situation as an example. You're thinking of this devotee and he's like driving you nutty. And then you ask yourself the question, what could I focus on right now? What else could I focus on aside from his nuttiness and his weirdness and whatever else? So here's the problem that I've seen, and it's a big problem. Because we're conditioned souls, we tend to habitually respond in the same way. And it's like the only way we know how to respond, right? It's like one way. It's just because we've responded that way forever. So, something upsets you. Some people respond in one way, some in another, but each individually, it's pretty much the same way we respond. Someone's angry, someone yells, somebody cries, somebody punches, somebody locks himself in a room for 3 days, someone sleeps all day, someone eats chocolate all day. It's like different response mechanisms, isn't it? All right, so wouldn't it be a better idea to reformat your response mechanism to be something that would help you in Krishna consciousness? So when you're responding the way you normally respond and you don't like it, just ask yourself this question: is there a better way to respond? What would be a more Krishna conscious way to respond? And you'll know. You know the philosophy, you've been around, you'll know there are better ways to respond. Even if you're not a devotee, you know there are better ways to respond, right? This is so important because we're so conditioned, we don't even think there's any other way to see things, or we don't think there's any other way to react, isn't it? Why'd you do that? What else was I supposed to do? Well, like there are 10,000 other things you could have done, or 10,000 other ways you could have responded. Oh, really? Yeah, well, just ask yourself, is there another way to look at this? Is there another way? Another question is another way to understand it. Could I understand this differently? Okay, so-and-so Prabhu says something like really off the wall, right? And you're going into reaction mode. And is it a different way to understand this? Like, so maybe you think, I need to like find out where he's coming from, like what's his background. So maybe you find out his background, his nature, or whatever, and then you go, oh, now I know why he does this. It's just who he is. And it's like, so it doesn't bother me anymore. I don't like it, but it doesn't bother me. I wish he wasn't that way, but that's how he is. I understand it. Or even if I don't understand it, I just understand right now, this is all he can be. So should I ruin my life over his problem? I hope not, right? Have you ever ruined your japa over someone else's problem? Like, is your japa not that valuable that you're willing to ruin it over, the mistake of another person? Yeah. How about ruining a day or a week or a decade or a life over someone else's problem that now becomes your problem when it never was, but you made it your problem? So this is really important. So in our self-care workshop, which you can all take in 2 weeks, 2 weekends. Not you, you could all take, you all should take. It will help you. But this is a principle of the self-care workshop. If you actually care about yourself, why would you do anything? And why would you think anything and have any belief or attitude which was harmful? And we don't think that way. We just go off into this dark, dark place. And why do they do that? And how could they do that? And the resentment and the envy, whatever it is. And if we just thought, self-care means to protect myself from myself going into these modes, right? And if I want to protect myself, then I'm going to ask that question. Well, how else can I see this in a way that's actually going to help me? You know, or worst case scenario, you go, I can't see it in a way that's going to help me. I can't work with this devotee because I'm not able to, you know. So that's self-care also. That's protect. But to go into the negative, it doesn't make sense. So that's really important. So if you can get it to the Krishna conscious level, that's best. Right. But I'll tell a story and I'll answer your question in a second. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was told about a problem a devotee had, and he wasn't told the problem, but he was told there was a problem, and he brought devotees into, and he said, glorify the devotee. So they did that, and then they said, can we tell you the problem? And he said no. And because he didn't want them to speak negative about a devotee, so he was training them. Like, you have a problem with the devotee, okay, why don't you just see something good, because then you won't be disturbed. And this devotee's problem is probably still going to be there, whatever you say. There's probably nothing we can do about it, unless it's corrupting the whole ashram or something. That's another thing. That's a practical consideration. But he wasn't going on the practical. He was going on the devotee internal. Right? So then another time, there was another problem with the devotee, and he was kind of like this devotee. But he was doing service all day. And so they were complaining about this devotee because he wasn't chanting his rounds. And Bhaktisiddhanta was glorifying him because he was doing service without chanting his rounds. I think, why was he glorifying him if he wasn't chanting his rounds? He said, because he had the strength to do service without chanting. So he took that in a positive way. Well, that's a positive. He's not even, it's like, I can hardly do service and I chant, and he's not, and he's doing service. So he's very advanced. He's, I'm not, basically Bhaktisiddhanta said, I'm not that advanced that I could do that. If I didn't chant, I wouldn't be able to do that. So he's like flipping it around. Is there another way to see this? Yes. And I will show you, because obviously none of the disciples were looking at it like that. Like, nobody would look at it like that. Right? And he flipped it on its head. And so what is he teaching us? That's the way to see it. Right? And if you go with your conditioned nature will see it, may tend to see it in ways which are harmful. Right? So is that clear? Yeah, it's quite simple, actually.
And it really speaks, really like confirms kind of what I've been trying to do. My practice with him, because my relationship with him is really important to me right now. Since we do work together, and I see him almost every day. And I found that like if I do have good relations with him, then everything goes very nicely. But there is a practical consideration too about the ashram.
Yeah.
And he's doing some really great preaching work actually. He's inviting all kinds of new people and doing it very indiscriminately so that everyone can get some chance. They don't take prasadam and get darshan, in other words. And so I find that other devotees get very upset when I talk about him and when I try to glorify him.
That's another thing. Yeah. Well, it's obviously in that situation, which is so small, then anyone who's not following properly will have an effect on everyone else. That's a consideration for sure. which is a different topic. But I can tell you something funny. Every temple has one of those. Certain as long as you hit a certain threshold of numbers, there'll be one of those, like that just like doesn't really fit, and it's like, yeah, you have the first experience. So back in Prabhupada's time, New Vrindavan had like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of devotees, and thousands and thousands of acres. So whenever you had a devotee like that, they would always be sent to New Vrindavan, because in that environment, there's so many devotees and it was so big. It didn't bother anybody. But in a small temple, it's something to consider. So there's two things. There's two things going on here. One is our own consciousness and dealing with the person and how we relate, so we don't relate in a way that works against us to cause us to make offenses or whatever negative emotion it'll bring out. And the other is how to practically deal with it in consideration of how that person's behavior is affecting others. And if we have to restrict them or in some way discipline them, we don't do it from this place of envy or criticism or whatever. We keep the proper mood that we want to maintain as Vaishnava, which we're committed to. No matter what, I want to maintain this mood of respect and humility. But if I have to make corrections, I have to do it for the sanctity of the community, but I won't depart from that mood. That's the hard part. But that's necessary. Absolutely necessary. Right? So you know who you know what you're striving to be, you know what your goals are. You don't let other people control that. You don't let other people degrade you because of their mistakes. And then you can deal with the situation as necessary, more effectively, because there won't be any envy there. There won't be any hard feelings. It's a reality. You have COVID, you need to go home now, until you get better. It's like that. I think it's a reflection on you need standards. Okay, we have a question? Mhm. Oh yeah. It's you're not controlling. So Nirali's saying, if someone's criticizing, blaspheming another devotee, blaspheming Krishna, Prabhupada, of course, we're going to get upset. And actually, if we didn't get upset, something would be wrong with us. But now what do you do? So a lot of times we're in situations which are upsetting. So the question is often not whether, well, sometimes the question's not whether to get upset or not, because it's already too late. You are, right? That's, it's like if someone came in here blaspheming Prabhupada, we'd all be upset. So the question is, what do you do? I was just talking with a godbrother, and we were talking about envy. And he was reflecting on his own envy. And I was saying that Jiva Goswami said that if you don't speak envious words, then you're not really fully manifesting your envy, or you're not really fully manifesting your the power of that envy, because you didn't speak it. You felt it, but you didn't speak it. So it doesn't have, it's like we feel so many things, but you see something, oh, it's got eggs in it, but it looks good. I'd like to eat it, but I can't. So you're not going to eat it, or whatever it is, oh, look at that house. I'd love to have the house. It's 3 times more than you can afford, 3 times bigger than you need. Well, just that, always wanted a house like that. Am I going to get 3 jobs so I can buy the house? Probably not. So it's like, one thing is feeling. Some feelings will change as you advance. But the real thing for us now is, how do we respond? right? So these people are saying critical things. How are we going to respond? It depends on the person, the situation, why they're saying it, what they're saying. And sometimes the response is just this, Or as I often tell devotees, say, what do you do when a devotee's criticizing another devotee? You say, excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom. And you just never come back. You can make a t-shirt like that. If you're going to criticize another devotee, I'm going to have to go to the toilet. But let's take this take it to a general principle. Either as a conditioned soul or a liberated soul, there's going to be feelings about everything. But the more conditioned we are, then the more the feelings will be not the way we'd want them to be. And we're working on cultivating feelings which are alignment with our philosophy, with our values. That's where we're going, right? And so now I feel something, but the question is, what are you going to do? So we'll give an example. Arjun's feeling so many things. And Krishna is saying, yeah, but what you're feeling is it's not helpful. And then Krishna says, are you ready to fight? Will you fight? And so when Arjun says, I'm prepared to fight, I think Krishna, when Arjun says, I'm prepared to fight, let's take it that he's saying, I'm going to fight no matter how I feel, because this is what you want me to do. So now let's go back to the second chapter. Krishna is saying, fight, right? Whether you're happy or sad, whether you win or... So he's basically saying, however you feel, fight, right? So if we reword that and say, however you feel, do and say the right thing. Okay, so I'm envious of this devotee, and I know it, it's clear. This devotee's like just better than me, smarter than me, more advanced than me, and it's driving me crazy. And I wish they didn't exist because it's making me feel like a piece of dirt or worse than dirt. You ever had that feeling? Why do you have to exist? You're making me feel so miserable. You're so Krishna conscious, driving me crazy. Okay, this does happen from time to time or constantly. But now, what is the right thing to do? The right thing to do is just say, this devotee is amazing. This is, I wish I could be like him. That's the right thing to say, even if you don't feel like it. Because you say what you feel, now that feeling is going to manifest itself. And it's going to raise its ugly head. And all that energy of that envy is going to be destructive. So that's often, that's often that's second chapter of the Gita. You ever, like, it's really hot and you go, it's so hot out here. Like, that's going to make it cooler. That just makes you feel worse. Right? Isn't it? So cold. I can't take it. It's so cold. And every time you say cold, you get colder. Right? So when Krishna's saying hot or cold, right? Just be equal. Like, don't think about it. You're hot. Just don't talk about it. You're cold. Just don't talk, because sometimes we have to talk about it, because we have some issues. But when you talk about issues, you're talking about them to heal them. But what I'm talking about is we're talking about them and then making it worse. We're just frustrated. So, so all those dualities Krishna is describing, he's saying, okay, whatever the duality is, don't give into it. Just keep doing your duty. Don't. So, okay, you feel envious, whatever. Praise the devotee. You want to be praised. You want to be in the center. You want to be glorified. Whatever. Just praise other devotees, and don't make sure you don't do service with that motive to be honored. Like, I'm going to cook this offering. It's going to be, it's going to be in the next newsletter of the temple. This was the best offering the deities ever got. And And what happens when it doesn't go in the newsletter? You know, these devotees, they don't appreciate me, you know. You want to go there? No, of course not. So on our level, often the Krishna consciousness is not acting out what we're feeling. And that's exactly second chapter. Okay, Arjuna, you're feeling this. Just keep doing your service and don't act on it. Right? Isn't that interesting? Pretty simple, and we don't get it. And we're acting on it all the time. Okay, so we will feel that. And now what are you going to do once you feel it? That's how am I gonna react to it? So, you know, it's like who's in charge of you? You or the situation around you? That's the big question. And I can guarantee you one thing for sure. If you're not in charge of your life, you're going to be completely miserable. Because there, you know, it's like we all want to be controllers. Why not just control your life? That's like, there's a lot of pleasure in controlling that, isn't it? Like, I shouldn't do this and I don't do it. What a blissful feeling that is. I didn't give into that. Or this devotee, I'm envious of him, but I had the strength within me to override that and appreciate. And I really tried to appreciate. And now I appreciate it. And I feel really good. And I glorify him. And like, wow, I did that. That was hard, but I did it. I feel, you know, and I feel good. As opposed to, oh, that devotee, who does he think he is? You know, all these people following him around. What'd he ever do? You know. Right? So I always advise devotees to, like, whatever the situation is, to always consider what would be the best way to think about this, the best thing to say about it, or the best way to act about it, rather than just say it, think it, or act it. And of course, as I'm saying, sometimes the thinking you can't always control. But you can't control what people put on your plate at the Hare Krishna temple, but you can't control what you take off your plate that you're not going to eat. Something like that. Oh, I go to the temple, I eat too much. Well, whose fault is that? It's the cook's fault. If it wasn't so good, I wouldn't eat so much. Yeah, that's true in a certain sense, right? When I overeat, I always say, it's the cook's fault I overeat. I am innocent. Yeah. So it seems like that, and it's a good excuse, makes you feel good. But the fact is, I overate, as opposed to, yeah, so, you know, there's so much on my plate, how much am I going to eat? I can take some off. So that if you live life that way, then you'll be happy and your Krishna consciousness will be easier. And then you can learn and apply what you're learning. But if we don't live that way, we can't apply what we're learning. It's just like more knowledge floating in our brains. And the more knowledge you have that you don't follow, the more miserable you become. Isn't it? Like if you didn't know it, then you didn't know you're not following it, which is less painful than knowing it and knowing you're not following it. And the more you know it and the more you don't follow, the more painful it is. And the more stupid you feel, and then you wonder if I'm ever going to follow it, right? So, yeah. Living in integrity with our philosophy is the highest ecstasy, I think. Living in integrity with our philosophy is the highest pleasure you'll experience. And reverse it, living out of integrity with our philosophy, with your values, is the greatest pain, the greatest misery. Isn't it? Living in integrity with our philosophy is your greatest ecstasy. Something like that. I mean, you can say it any way you want, you get the idea. You know, one of the points that I find so difficult for some of us to understand is that we don't have to act on our conditioning. We will feel our conditioning, but we don't have to act on it. Right? So a lot of times we feel bad because we're conditioned, and the condition, as conditioned souls, we have feelings we shouldn't have, and we feel bad. Why do I feel this way? I shouldn't. But you can congratulate yourself for not acting on those feelings. Because in a certain condition level, it's like those feelings will be there. I identify with my body. I'm a conditioned soul. I have certain needs, desires. I'm not perfectly humble, etc., etc. So these things come up, but if I don't act on it, that's fantastic. And a lot of times, what we focus on is what's wrong with ourselves. We don't focus on the fact there's something wrong with us, but we didn't give into it, which is glorious. That's the glorious part, and like, there's something wrong. Hello, you wouldn't have a material body if there wasn't something wrong. Like something wrong. Surprise, surprise. Like, I've been chanting Hare Krishna for 3 hours and still, I still think I'm the body. Oh, really? Yeah. Try like 300 years, see. Then you'll get closer. So this is important. So where does the focus go for most devotees? The focus goes on what the failing, right? Instead of the focus going on, I'm a conditioned soul. These are natural responses for a conditioned soul, but I didn't give into them. I didn't act on them. I didn't verbalize them, even though I thought them or felt them. I controlled it. So when Krishna's telling Arjuna, don't give into happiness or distress, it means it's going to be there. You're going to feel it. Just don't give into it. Success or failure, like, I want to be successful. I want to win this war. I'm Kshatriya. I'm the most powerful warrior. Obviously, my prestige is on the line. Yeah, but okay. That's understandable. That's human nature. And you're going to be miserable if you fail, but just don't give into it. Don't let it affect you. So that's all Krishna is saying. Don't let your conditioning affect you. Even though it does affect you, it will affect you. Until you're transcendental or purified, don't let it affect you. Don't be affected by what affects you, is basically what he's saying. That's interesting, isn't it? That's a good one. Don't be affected by what affects you. Put that on Facebook. I like that. Because no one's going to understand what that means. But unless they go, then you say, if you want to understand what it means, you have to go to this class. You will be, if it's Krishna conscious, but don't be affected by what affects you, unless you want to be affected by it. Yeah, that's the other half. Yeah, because you may want to be affected by it because it's ecstatic. So don't be affected by what you don't want to be affected by. Don't be affected by what affects you that you don't want to be affected by. That's it. That's it. That's the name of this class. You can put that as the title. Yeah. I told this story before, maybe you heard of it. So Arjuna lost his son in the battle, and Arjuna was lamenting. And so one man, the Indian man, said, I can't see Arjuna as a pure devotee because he's lamenting. And of course, in the second chapter, Krishna says, don't lament. So he says, how is it that Arjuna could be a pure devotee? Because his son died and he's lamenting. And that's not the sign of a pure devotee, because I'm not the body and this is not my son and I'm not the father, etc., etc. And Prabhupada said, the very point we're making, he said, you'll notice that Arjuna was lamenting, which is natural. He lost his son, so it's natural. He said, but he didn't stop fighting. So he didn't let that situation cause him to give up his action. So I may be affected by A, B, and C, but if I go on with my devotional service, that's still considered pure, even though I'm affected by it. It's like, okay, in a sense, it's even more glorious that you're affected by something and you don't allow it to affect you, is in one sense more glorious than not being affected by it. Because if you're not affected by it, that's easy. There's no struggle, there's no difficulty. But the fact that I'm affected by it and I didn't allow it to affect me is glorious. And therefore, Prabhupada said, Krishna likes to see his devotees struggle. Krishna thinks it's glorious. And the struggle is, of course, we're struggling with our own desire and our own conditioning. And so I think it's just a beautiful focus. Instead of focusing on what's wrong with me, focus on that in spite of what's wrong with me, I didn't give in. That's glorious. Right? Isn't it? I could have given in. I had, I could have just screamed at this person and they deserved it, but I didn't. And I'm justified in being resentful, but I'm not going to go there. Give yourself a pat on the back. Yeah, that's good. I'm following the 4 principles. Sometimes difficult, sometimes not perfectly, but I brush myself off and I get back up again and I keep trying. That's glorious. Still here struggling, could have given up a long time ago. Krishna's looking at it. Like, you don't think Krishna knows what's going on in your heart? You don't think he knows? He created the material energy. He knows how hard it is to get out. Yeah. You ever ask, think, when I see Krishna, I'm going to complain to him. You made it too difficult. Why did you make it so difficult? All the guys are going to go to Krishna. Why'd you make the women so beautiful? If they're all ugly, I could have been a brahmachari. It would have been easy. No, it doesn't do it that way. The guys always think like that. They're fine, everything's good, and there's that one, the Krishna. Why did you have to create her? I was fine till she walked in the room, or whatever it is. Whatever your weakness is. Why did you have to create that? Everything was good until that. So then we can see it as, okay, that's good, because now I can show Krishna that I'm not going to give into it, even though I want to give into it. I'm not going to, because I want to. I don't want to verbalize or act on those desires. And that way I can show you I'm serious. And I become strong that way. And if you practice it enough, again and again and again, that becomes your default. No matter what happens, you always default to just devotional service. I follow it no matter what. Even if I give into it occasionally, I have to default back to, I just continue. That's the best you can do. And so now I want to ask you, what do you want to focus on? Because you have a choice of what you want to focus on. So you want to focus on your failings, or you want to focus on your success? Now we think, well, I'm a humble devotee, I should focus on my failings. But the problem is, in many cases, when you focus on your failings, you just become discouraged. Rather than focus on, I'm still trying and I'm going to get this done. So then we misapply humility, right? And that works against us. Anything that works against you in Krishna consciousness, you should understand you misapplied it. I'm not very inspired because of A, B, and C, but just trying to be humble, like, no. Real humility doesn't produce depression, discouragement, feeling, these feelings. So sometimes we damage ourselves in the name of thinking, well, this is how a devotee should think, but the consequence of your thinking that way is you can't hardly even get out of bed. So obviously that's not the way you should be thinking, right? Hare Krishna. Okay. Now we promise to say a few words, and then we'll take your questions. So last night I saw Radhanath Swami and we started talking spontaneously for quite some time. And devotees wanted to know what he said. Well, I was very close to a devotee named Gunagari Maharaj, and Maharaj was with Gunagari Maharaj when Gunagari Maharaj was leaving his body. He was there the last 4 days. So Maharaj knew that I was close with him. And he told me, I was there with Gunagari Maharaj, and he said that he was appreciating everything so much in his last days. I actually saw that like a year before he died. But Maharaj was saying he was appreciating all the devotees, the holy name, everything intensely. That's all that was. Wouldn't you like to be in that frame when you're dying? just appreciation, you know. Could you imagine being end of your life, damn ISKCON, damn GBC, those gurus, who do they think they are? And then you leave your body. Ah, we could do a little drama like that, you know. There's a planet for all the people that hate ISKCON, and they're all like bashing ISKCON. And then he told a story that I never heard before, because and this is interesting because there's a devotee here that agreed to write a book on Guru Nanak Maharaj's life, and I'm happy he's doing it because I was asked to do it, and I don't think I could do it well or find the time to do it. So this other devotee agreed to do it, and I was talking to him. I said, you know, we should get together and talk. And then so then last night, which was, I think I talked to this devotee Saturday, and then so last night I spoke to Maharaj, and Maharaj said, do you know the first devotee I ever met was Guru Nanak Maharaj? Said I met him in Buffalo, New York at a rock concert. And he came up to me and gave me a reservoir of pleasure. And while we were talking, this guy came up to me to try to sell me some hashish. And Guru Nanak Maharaj was, and then Maranatha Swami said, I didn't have any money. So I told him I don't have any money. And then the hashish guy came, and Guru Nanak Maharaj was like trying to deal with this guy and just walked off with him, kind of chastising him or whatever, preaching to him. And then Maharaj had was left with the books. Well, the Reservoir of Pleasure. And Maharaj said, he looked at the back and he saw Prabhupada's picture. And he didn't know anything. And he said, yeah, if anybody's happy, it's this person. He could tell by looking at Prabhupada's picture. And then he said that was right before he went to India. And he had the Reservoir of Pleasure with him on his way to India. And then I forget where he was. He was on a bus somewhere and the bus broke down. And they had to get off, and he left the Reservoir of Pleasure. That I thought he would have taken it with him. He said, no, I left it. So we were reminiscing about Guru Nanak Maharaj. And he said he was actually very close with him because they were both making devotees and doing college preaching. So they used to connect every once in a while. And then, and I said, do you remember that time there was a conference and you, me, and Guru Nanak Maharaj were staying in the same room? He goes, oh yeah, I remember that. It was something like we were being trained in public relations like 30 years or 40 years ago, and somewhere. Anyway, he was appreciating Guru Nanak Maharaj and how we worked together. And he said he was there for his sannyas also. Came to San Diego. And when Maharaj came to San Diego, it was like 1979. And I asked him a question, and I thought about this the other day because I was thinking about humility. I said, Maharaj, when we come to Krishna consciousness, you know, the like first few weeks, few months, 6 months, it's like we're really humble. Like we're not proud. And I said, but after we stay, we start becoming proud, it seems. And I said, this is like a contradiction. It should be the other way around. I said, why is that? And he gave such a nice answer, which is so true. He said, because when you first come, you have nothing to be proud of, because you're just a new bhakta. So we were talking about that this morning, like that new bhakta is just starting out, and you're with all these other devotees who've been practicing for years. So you have the utmost respect for them, right? And you haven't done anything. You might be proud materially, but in terms spiritually, you haven't really done much, if anything. So you tend to be very humble and respectful until you start doing something. And all of a sudden you're the number one this or the number one that. And then that's when the pride enters. So then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said, he said, pride can be caused by devotional service. You think, devotional service would purify pride, but pride can be caused by service because you do it well, and then people praise you, or you just praise yourself in an unhealthy way. So that's interesting, right? So I was thinking recently, and I was mentioning it this morning on the walk. I said, I think we need to go back to that mood of when we were brand new devotees and everyone was like amazing. I see everyone as amazing. Or if you're brand new and you think that way, just stay that way. That's the perfect mood of Krishna consciousness. Anyway, we talked about other things, but that was the basis was just his relationship with Gunagraj Maharaj, because he knew that I was very close with him. And they had corresponded a lot about making devotees and college preaching, which Maharaj was doing for many years. So I just wanted to do one, well, yeah, just before we do questions, one other thing is this talk about envy that came up in class, and we're talking a little bit about it. And I think one of the most important things to understand about envy is that envy cannot exist. Envy towards another person cannot exist unless that envy exists towards Krishna. And so that's very painful. And it's sometimes difficult to understand how we could be envious of Krishna, isn't it? Like you go on the street and say, "Excuse me, sir, are you envious of God?" Like, who's going to say, "Yeah"? How they say, "I don't believe in God," and they'll say, "No." But because Krishna is the supreme controller and supreme enjoyer, when we want to enjoy independently or control independent of his service, then we're being envious of him. That's what it means, right? So it's just always good to recognize when I'm envious of someone, I always have a reason why, like a good one, right? This is why I'm envious, because, as opposed to, no, I'm envious of Krishna, and that's why. It's like Bhaktisiddhanta said, when we criticize, we think, well, I have a reason to criticize. Like, otherwise I wouldn't. And he said, no, it's because we're not humble. So that's why. Like, face the reality, don't make up an excuse. Okay, somebody's doing something wrong, we have to rectify it. Okay, that's fine. But where it's not justifiable, then just acknowledge it. This is lack of humility. So envy is just, we have to acknowledge it stems from envy of Krishna. And somehow or other, we are trying to be happy that others are advancing. We're trying to be happy if they're advancing more than we are. We're trying to be happy if they're more successful than we are. And then if you can be happy at the success of another person, you're going to be one happy devotee. And if you can't, you're going to be one unhappy devotee. Money back guarantee on that one. Some of the greatest happiness you can experience is the happiness of appreciating someone who is advancing in Krishna consciousness, someone who's successful. If you can, it's like you can enjoy vicariously, in a sense, their success. And then you become very joyful in their happy, like if you love somebody, you're always happy in their success. So we should try to be that way with everyone. Hare Krishna. So we have some questions on chat, and we can also answer your questions. We have a quote here about being steady. That topic of being steady, we have a quote. This is from It's like a lecture in New York, probably the early days, maybe. But a devotee cannot give up his profession. You see, he was being chastised. This is Prahlad, so many times by his father. But what Prahlad Maharaj was doing, oh, because he was king, he ordered the teachers that the boy is coming home and chanting Hare Krishna. What is this nonsense? Teachers were asked. Teachers said, we do not teach Hare Krishna. According to your regulation, we are secular. There's no possibility of teaching God or God's name. I don't know where he's got this Hare Krishna. Hiranyakashipu became very angry. So he said to Prahlad, where have you got this Hare Krishna? He said, Father, from where have you got your anger? I've got the Hare Krishna from the same place you get your anger. From Krishna. You want to be angry? He supplies the anger. And I want to chant. So I'm not sure exactly why she put that there. Maybe to show how Prahlad was not disturbed. Okay. I can't answer this next question. Why do some devotees feel it's important to steal items from the temple? Or no, not important. Why is it okay to steal important items from the temple? It depends what they're stealing. Important like rasgullas and gulabs? That stealing is good. Mahaprasad that the temple's going to sell, that's not good. That they're going to give away and you want to steal it. It's probably transcendental, but you'd have to give me an example. What are they stealing? It must be prasadam, right? Okay, here's the quote. Chaitanya Dasi put in for reminders. Living in integrity with our philosophy is the highest ecstasy. Don't be affected by what affects you that you don't want to be affected by. Yeah. Chaitanya Dasi Satyarupa says, don't be affected by what affects you. Some may take shelter of repression. Yeah. You're supposed to take shelter of, no, the idea is, if I get affected by what affects me in the wrong way, then I can't do devotional service. So Krishna's saying, don't get affected so you can fight. So repression's not going to help. I mean, if something's not going well, it's not going well. Like, so if something's not going well in your life, then, retrace your steps. Something's wrong somewhere, right? Well, that's it. Okay. John, did you ask a question? Okay.
Like, go back to the previous example of the devotee. He seems to be making quite a bit of progress because he's really feeling a lot of transcendental emotions, especially while he reads Bhagavatam. And it's very confusing to me. Like, what is real progress?
Well, progress can vary. He's asking what's progress, because this devotee is making progress, but not, looks like he is and he isn't. Yeah. And the answer is he is and he isn't. And it's going to come to a point where he'll have to give in one way or the other. He'll have to decide which way he wants to go. But the thing is, we have a very, ISKCON at this point is very, initiation oriented. This is just how you do it, get initiated. And another one back to Godhead. But if you imagine the whole world being Krishna conscious, then this person would just be one of millions of normal people adjusting and practicing Krishna consciousness according to how they can practice. It's just that if they're living in an ashram, it's awkward. But if they're not, it's perfectly like, wow, he likes Bhagavatam, he doesn't like the chant. Okay. You want to be initiated, you want to take this more seriously, well, then you'll have to start chanting rounds and so forth. But if you're looking at the whole world, that's not going to happen. This is your religion, this is your way of life, this is what you believe in. And so, now you're doing your best. So we would think at some point he would start chanting. So I think it's important to when you look at Krishna consciousness, think about it. If the whole world were Krishna conscious, and then put this person as one of them, and you realize this is just totally normal. He's probably doing way better than normal if you're looking at everyone being Krishna conscious. It's just not normal in the ashram. That's where the problem is. That's the way I see it. A lot of problems are not problems. It's just put in a situation, it's a problem. This guy is not a Navy SEAL, just put him in the Navy. He's fine in the Navy, but he's not Navy SEAL. So everyone's complaining about him. He got put in the Navy SEALs, but he's not qualified. It's like that.
What's the importance of chanting as far as the progress?
Yeah, everything. But, we have examples of people, chanting is everything, but we have examples in the Bhagavatam of people becoming purified and perfected by adopting one of the processes. So, reading Bhagavatam is also chanting because you're hearing and speaking. It's not recommended as the ultimate process. But so the mistake he's making, he's just not following the authorized process. He's following part of it, but not the whole thing. So probably he's not going to get the whole result, and hopefully one day he'll understand. But, if he's serving and happy, then it's okay. He's okay. You got to make him okay. Maybe living in the ashram is maybe awkward. Unless you have a room for people who don't want to chant. The no chanting Hare Krishna room. Bhagavatam only. There could be worse things than that, right? Okay, we'll see you around. Yes.
What are any advice on when you feel like your particular environment, maybe where you live or people, distractions?
Yeah.
If you're fighting against that constantly,
Yeah.
and you're wanting to do more Krishna conscious things, and there's just constant, like a battle.
Yeah, you have to create a bubble. KC bubble program. And to create your own bubble. But it's the same thing because you're allowing yourself to get affected. So now you're thinking about them and what's wrong with them. Don't go there. That is definitely a trap. Because once you do that, it all becomes real. Because then you can say, yeah, this is why I'm having trouble. No, the reason you're having trouble is because you're focusing on somebody else who potentially could give you trouble if you allow that. They can affect you if you allow it, but you don't have to allow them to affect you. Someone could say, why aren't you doing this or that? And say, well, because my wife's not so supportive. Well, why does she have to support you? You can just do it. But if you think I can't do it unless she supports me, then you won't do it. And you'll blame her. So don't go there. Don't be dependent on other people for your Krishna conscious. And you have to carve out somewhat of a bubble without being unkind and impersonal. But that bubble is just so, like, I know what I need and I know what I have to do and I do it. And it's kind of like what we're talking about. If you know what you want to do and need to do, you don't want to allow anything in the world to stop that. Right. And so that's kind of the position I've taken, I think, by my nature, since I've been a devotee. It's like, this is what I want to do. So I'm just going to make sure I don't allow anything or anybody to have a negative influence on that. And if they do, then I have to internally adjust myself. So it's no longer a negative. It may be also creating some space, some time, like, hello, everyone, this time every day, this is when I'm going to chant. I'll be with you at 7 a.m. Before that, the peanut butter's in the refrigerator and the bread's there. And, you're a big boy. You can put jelly and peanut butter on it if you're hungry. Like that. Something like that, or make the sandwiches, make the breakfast at night, and you go in the morning, I don't exist before 7 a.m. I'm not existing. So you can, practically do things like that also. But the internal is important. Like, I want to be Krishna conscious, then I have to figure out internally within me how I'm going to do that. Like when I travel, I'm at the airport, right? Airports are the worst place in the universe, in the three worlds for japa, guaranteed. So when I'm at the airport, I got to find the best place I can, like my flight's at gate 10, but at gate 20, there's nobody there because there's no flight. That's where I'll sit and wait for my flight and chant japa. It's just, you have to you're always thinking path of least resistance, the least distraction, the least, and, I'm not going to be affected, well, my husband sleeps 20 hours a day. So why do you sleep 20? Because he does. And I was like, well, that's stupid, right? Why do you eat 5 times a day? Because he does. You don't want to go there. You want to do what you have to do. And that's important. Yes.
We can mention that if there's pride, this person. Could you explain how it's connected?
Ah. I want to be, pride means I want to be honored. I want to be glorified. I want to be, pride is not just, I want to be appreciated. Appreciated can be much different than pride. Pride means I want to enjoy being honored. I want to be, acknowledged. So if I want to be acknowledged and someone else is being acknowledged, or someone else is doing something which is acknowledgement worthy, perhaps more acknowledgement worthy than what I'm doing, I don't get the acknowledgement because it goes to them. So now I don't like that, right? Where that point that I was making, that you become happy when you see others happy. You become happy when you see others are doing well. That's because you don't have pride. Otherwise, with pride, you can't be happy when others do well. Now, it can also relate to psychological issues, so it's not just purely a philosophical thing. Like, why do I need, and I think you know the answer, why do I need to be honored? Because I don't honor myself. That's why, right? Because I doubt myself, and I doubt my self-worth, and I doubt so many things about myself. And because I doubt so many things about myself, I feel inferior, and I need to be jacked up by other people's compliments. So it has that element in it, right? So I don't think you can really separate. I think that element, I think when we talk about pride, there's a psychology of pride, right? That goes deep into a feeling of lack. And the more we are fulfilled in Krishna consciousness, the less we lack, the less we need on every level, not just to be glorified, but so many ways we lack. And a lot of the criticism comes from that, because we need to bring people down because it makes us feel low if they're high. So it's either envy or criticism. And when we're more satisfied in Krishna consciousness, and also simultaneously, we need to also be satisfied within ourselves as on an emotional level. And so when you're happy, you're chanting good rounds, you have good association, you have good friends, everything's good. It's like, do you really care that someone else has a good life? But when you feel lack, then that disturbs you, because you think they have what you don't have. And so I think it's also could be a doubt that Krishna consciousness is going to give that to me. Like as if I'm going to get something that's really going to satisfy me outside of Krishna consciousness. No. But there might be there might be human needs there that you have to meet. And that because theirs aren't being met, it's kind of triggering itself up to envy and pride. Whereas if you just met basic human needs, then maybe you wouldn't have it. So these are, you have to explore that, because sometimes it's just something's missing in your life and you're not satisfied. Maybe it's you don't have good relationships, or just genuine appreciation, that's not pride. You feel good in yourself. And so it's like a psychological problem, but it's generating this unhealthy need to be honored and glorified, which is a sensual need, subtle sensual need, not a psychological need. And sometimes if the psychological need is there, then that need to be honored and like that, it's not.
So it could be, because I thought that the source of envy and pride was limiting belief that love is limited, so I need to fight for love.
Yeah. That can be there, definitely.
But it exists on its own. Like, I believe like all demoniac nature is like based on this envy of God, which means like feeling that love connection.
Yeah, well, it can manifest. Envy of Krishna can manifest in so many different ways. And all those ways you described. There's not enough love to go around. Like, yeah. But that comes from a lack of self-love. If you have self-love, why then
Where was this person?
you? Because Krishna loves you, you love yourself. Yeah. Feeling it, not understanding it. Being convinced and feeling it, that you already are loved. So that's a natural. Taking care of yourself is a natural byproduct of wanting to reconnect with Krishna and reciprocate for his love. If I don't take care of myself, I won't. I'll allow myself to maybe deviate and get sidetracked, and then I can't properly repay Krishna for his love.
I feel like in the beginning, if I come from the consciousness of lack of self-love, and when I hear that, oh, you need to work yourself out, so Krishna sees through Krishna's reciprocates with you, so it confirms like, oh, I need to work to Krishna, to be loved by Krishna.
No.
But then it comes later understanding that no, Krishna waits there, like it's cheering me up, like yes, you did one step.
Yeah.
Closer.
You need to wait to be loved by Krishna? Like, what are you going to do? Like you're gonna be a pure devotee in 3 days and he's gonna love you like he loves Prabhupada? No. Krishna, it's already there. It's just, Prabhupada said, Krishna loves you even if you don't love him. So it's not like his love is conditional. Like unconditional. We need unconditional love. Where does that come from? Who gives unconditional love in this world? Maybe a mother, sort of, until you decide to go to college and then drop out, and then the unconditional love kind of fizzles away. But it's Krishna who gives unconditional love. So here's the problem. The problem is not that Krishna doesn't love us. The problem is we don't love him. And we're thinking, oh, Krishna doesn't love me. Like that's the problem? No, it's not the problem. The problem is I don't love him. The problem is not he doesn't love me. And if we think that's the problem, we got it all screwed up. Right? Yes? We're all for problem. Krishna doesn't love me. No. You're like, what are you going to do? I don't like him anymore. He doesn't love me. No. What can you do? You can love him. That's what you can do, because you don't have to worry about him loving you. He's got that taken care of. But I don't deserve it. Doesn't matter. Prabhupada said, doesn't matter. You don't love him? Doesn't matter. He loves you. To think otherwise is like, that just goes back into like, could be a philosophical misunderstanding, or it could be just go back into some kind of crazy something church you went to when you were 6 years old and they told you you're going to some hell that, whatever, because you walked in the wrong door at the church or something, or it could come lifetimes of samskars of feeling useless, or it can come from trying to be humble and not understanding what humility means. And just humility means, self-berating. Why would God love me? I'm the scum of the universe. I'm so dirty and wretched and horrible. How could he love someone as low as me? I might as well cast myself to the dogs. What's the use? Yeah. So find in our books anything that says that. We think it says that, but it doesn't. That's the problem. We read it and then it mixes up with our own lack of self-worth, and then we add 2 and 2 and get 5, and we make a big mistake. Krishna doesn't love me. Give me a break. Like something's wrong with him. He can't love you. Something's wrong with him. He loves everybody but me. He loves all living entities except me. Because how could he love me? Because I'm so bad. Yeah, I'm so special. There it is. Pride comes up again. Yes, you had.
So what it is, that process. Krishna's love.
Yeah. I think it's unworthiness, like maybe I think it could be that we know how bad we are, and we think, a person as bad as me, why would Krishna, we look at it kind of from an ethical perspective. A person as bad as me should not deserve to be loved. That would be wrong. It's like, going in prison and loving people. These guys just kill people. Why love them? But from a spiritual perspective, you understand, if we could love all those guys in prison, that would cure them. Sitting in prison doesn't cure them, but if they could be loved, it would cure them. So we're looking at it very logically or ethically or morally. Why would Krishna love someone like me? I turned against him. I committed sin and so forth. So that could be one of the reasons. I'm not worthy of being loved, or it doesn't make sense logically that he would love, or I have to qualify to be loved, or I was not loved growing up. So that puts a samskar, a dent in there that I'm, my mother wouldn't love me. Why would God? There can be so many reasons. And then the philosophical, like I was saying, which are, you may come to ISKCON, fine, you have like everything. And then philosophically, you might think, oh, look, you start to realize how sinful I am or bad I am. Then you might think, why would Krishna like me? And then I took initiation, I took vows, and then I broke a vow. And then you could think, oh, well, now Krishna doesn't love me. It's over. It's finished. It could be so many reasons we think that way. As if those things, I mean, if you're going to blaspheme Prabhupada or Krishna's pure devotee, then Krishna's going to, okay. Enough is enough, get that together. Until then, we'll see you later, but potentially that love is always there. When the child comes back home, it's, of course we love you. It's just that you spit in my face 100 times. So it's hard to love you. So Krishna's kind of like that. You're going to keep spitting in his face. He's going to go, okay, just, I'm here for you, but don't spit in my face anymore. So as long as you're willing, Krishna's willing. As long as you're willing to dance with Krishna, he's willing to dance with you. And so, the problem, like I was telling you, Irina, the problem is not with Krishna, it's with us. So we should never think, why doesn't Krishna love me? Why doesn't Krishna give me mercy? No, he is. Why don't we learn to take it and see it in the proper way so we can take it? Does that make sense? Yeah. Simple, right? So simple, only took me 50 years to figure it out. Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone. Why are devotees stealing items from the deity kitchen? That is the question. I think those devotees need jobs. But all I can say to you is, don't steal from Krishna, because that is like serious. Serious. Okay. Yes, more questions.
So this is going back to
sometimes we have limitations. So for example, using association with devotees, obviously, can be difficult for many of us without.
Oh, lamenting. Yeah. Okay, how to deal with it. So there's 2,800 devotees here. We've been here Friday, Saturday, Sunday, today's Monday, and now we all have to leave. So everyone's looking quite depressed here. I'll show you their depressed face. Now I got them laughing, but you should have seen them a minute ago. Wow. They were all like, they were looking quite like, what am I going to do with my life now? That there's no more 2,800 devotees. So. When we would do the japa workshops, we'd have at the end, we'd have like, we spent like 5 days, but it was with like 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 devotees in the same room all day together. Like it wasn't like we were off from 5 a.m. till like 8:30, 9 p.m. And at the end, when devotees would share, they would say, like, can I take you all with me? Because I don't think I can leave now. And we would say, well, we have a photo here you can take with you. So in other words, you take the devotees with you in your heart. And you have more appreciation for devotees now because you've seen how glorious they are. And I always say, like, everything in the material world, it exists in the spiritual world. So you're going to feel separation. So at least feel separation from the devotees. Right? So that's not separation from the devotees is good. And here's a little mantra for you. I will ask you this question. Nirali, are you feeling the ecstasy of separation yet? As Prabhupada uses the word ecstasy, the ecstasy of separation. So maybe just keep that mantra with you. I'm leaving for the airport. The ecstasy of separation is starting to set in. Yeah, something like that. The ecstasy of separation, yeah. But if I'm missing a devotee, I'm thinking about them. And if I'm thinking about devotees, I'm purified. Prabhupada was once laughing. They said, why are you laughing? He said, I'm thinking of this devotee. He's a very funny devotee. And I'm thinking of the funny things he does and says, and I'm feeling purified by thinking of this funny devotee. So, Hare Krishna. So, you can't feel separation unless there's some attachment. So that's the liability of getting association and feeling pleasure. But if you think of the devotees, they're with you by thinking. Yeah. They're always thinking, that was a bad answer. She's like, separation anxiety. Can you give me another answer? Yeah. So really the answer she wants is there a way we could all just stay here forever? Because I don't want to leave this. Yeah, well. We had that in Mayapur, this many devotees at Mangalartik every day. So you can always move to Mayapur. Anyway. Some other question? Sam?
I don't know how that guy can think like this paragraph without chanting. Because when I started, I couldn't understand anything about
Oh,
Buddha.
right.
And
Yeah.
I started to read,
Yeah.
but this is only a hope that I have. But my
Yeah.
question, I tried to follow values from the philosophy, but thinking about my reactions relating to people. But then I realized that I kind of suppress some anger
Yes.
that is not manifest
Mhm.
strong, and I don't want it. So I think it's a sort of balance that we find to not give all the anger against the other person, but in a sort of way to create, to let it go from in another way that
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's saying, in order to purify, we could suppress. We have to deal with it. Yeah. And you have to find out what's causing it also. Or find out how to use it. Anger is energy. So it could be used. Like all my, every seminar I created has anger behind it. You know that? Because I was angry at Maya for, I was just angry that devotees were being misled by Maya. And I wanted to do a seminar. It would make me, I'd see some devotee chanting japa really poorly. I would be angry. You can't do that. This is wrong. I would be upset, or, forgiveness, or devotees berating themselves. It would upset me. So there was some kind of anger there. It was something upsetting me. So I could use it. Or I wrote a book recently. So the BBT is going to publish it. And it was written out of anger that there was no BBT book after 50 years, an introductory book, the kind of book you wish you had. Like I could just give this person. It's got everything. They could understand it. It's very clear. There's follow-up. They can go to a website, that book. I was angry. It didn't exist. So it's like, I'll just write it, I wrote it out of anger. I mean, I wasn't sitting there like smoke out of my ears, but there was some anger there that, and I had suggested to the BBT to write such a book like in the 90s. And they said, yeah, we're going to get someone to write it. And it was never written. So I'm like doubly angry. So, you can use anger that way. Hare Krishna. Okay, everyone. We miss you all. We wish you were here in Dallas, Texas, with the other 2,800 of us, jumping up and down like popcorn till 10:30 at night. But we'll be with you again wherever we see you. Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. Jai.